G'day guys, Tom Craig here. Welcome to my podcast, The Help Side. Now the help side is a term in hockey that refers to the other side of the pitch, away from where the ball is and the action happens. And in the same way, the aim of this podcast is to give you, the listener, an insight into the other side of elite hockey players, to hear about their highs, their lows, and what makes them tick. We'll also hear about the journey they went through, from having fun in the backyard to playing out their dreams on the world stage. So whether you're a player, a coach, an umpire, a parent, a fan, or just a fan of sport in general, I'm hoping this podcast gives you a window into the world of elite athletes, and even better, encourages you to get more involved in our great sport. You can hear the chat we had last week and others you may have missed by searching The Help Side on any major podcast platform. And if you want, you can like and subscribe our page to make sure that you're up to date with the most recent episodes. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get to this week's guest.
Goes to Dixon. Dixon with a drag flick, and Dixon scores.
Roper went on the dummy run, and Dixon gets his first goal as captain of Great Britain.
Comes to Dixon. Dixon straight shots, and Dixon scores this time.
Adam Dixon is the current captain of the Great Britain men's hockey team and is one of the most highly respected players in world hockey, having represented England and GB on more than 250 occasions. Adam is an Olympian, a dual Commonwealth Games medalist, a European Championships gold medalist, a Hockey India League champion, and above all else, he is a ripping bloke who I had the good fortune of playing with at the Kalinga Lancers back in 2017. Now we cover quite a bit of ground in this interview, so much so that we've had to split it into two separate episodes. In this episode, part A, Adam gives us an insight into the GB high-performance setup and the challenges of the lockdown, including how he was forced into early isolation with suspected coronavirus symptoms. Don't worry, it's alright, he's okay. We then talk about the current state of the game in the UK, a country where hockey is enjoying a bit of a renaissance following the London Olympics and the gold medal success of the GB women at the Rio Games. Adam is open, thoughtful, and has some interesting perspectives on where the game needs to head in order to break into the mainstream. This is the help side of Adam Dixon. Here we go. I'm here with Adam Dixon, captain of GB and England hockey team. Is that right? That's a strange role. Like, I don't think many countries in the world have like a...
No, are there any others? No, not that I can think of.
I can't think of any.
Yeah, pretty unique.
Very unique. You're one of a kind. Not a bad way to start off.
Yeah, one of a kind. Thank you.
Self-introduction. That's all we'll do. Adam Dixon, one of a kind. Well, we're going to get into that a little bit later because that is kind of interesting. But first of all, you're cooped up at home in the UK. Now, we've only had Aussies on the show so far, but I imagine it's a little bit different for you guys over in Europe. How was it when the announcement was released, and what have you been doing since?
Yeah, it's certainly a funny time. I think I'd just kick off by saying I think we're actually really lucky as a group of GB hockey players. We're still, funded to train, even though we're in lockdown, training in isolation. There's much bigger, worse things going on out there in the world, and yeah, just count ourselves very lucky. But yeah, the whole Olympic thing was obviously huge breaking news. We had that weird period where I think everybody sort of knew the Olympics was going to be canned, but then no one would come out and say it. And I think that was probably the worst period. Just sitting there, training as normal, training as if you were going to turn up to the Olympics in July, and being peak physical fitness. And I think everybody knew that wasn't going to be the case. So to finally get the news was like a big sense of relief. We had been in regular dialogue, I think every single day via email with our performance director. So that was the whole men's and women's squads. He'd give a daily update on where the British Olympic Association, where their stance was, and all the various sports and how they were going to try and feed into the IOC meetings and things. And they were keeping us updated as best as they possibly could. We actually got the news. It's sort of, the way the wicked media works at times. Most people saw it on Twitter before we actually got an announcement from GB Hockey, but that's through no fault of theirs. So we then later had a big conference call, like all sort of 40 members of the squad, like, and the guys on the fringe and all the staff and everybody included, with the performance director and Danny Carey just talking through what was going on. And you're going to go into isolation, no more centralised training at Bisham Abbey, etc., etc. So it was just, it's just been a really strange time. You've seen all the videos on social media, people keeping themselves busy with training and doing all sorts. We've been quite lucky that the GB Hockey had a little pot of money available just to, I think each player got a couple of £100 to go out and buy as much training equipment as they could. So if you weren't able to get into Bisham Abbey and raid the gym on the last day that it was open, like loads of people did, you could still, buy whatever you needed to some extent. So the garden now has got a TRX in there. I could just do bodyweight circuits and stuff on, and little things like that, which has been quite good. But I think we're about 40 days into isolation.
It's a long time.
Me and my fiance, and we actually did show some sort of symptomatic signs, like illness-wise, before the UK went into full lockdown. So we were already isolating on the advice of our GB doctors. So we'd done 10 to 14 days before the UK kicked in. So we're well in it. I think we've only had one argument, so I think we're doing okay.
And you bought a bike as well.
Yeah, bought a bike. There's only so much training you can do in your back garden, especially when your back garden is sort of 5 square meters. So it's I've just been getting out, doing 30, 40k on the bike, a couple of hours, absolute max. And actually we've been amongst all of the isolation, like tedious stuff going on. Like, the weather's actually been pretty good in the UK. And I think that adds, just like contributing towards mental health and
it's good,
and
or
sanity through all this is really, really good. I think
if
this had happened in the middle of our winter and everyone was cooped up indoors,
it'd be shocking.
It'd be much, much worse. So things have been not amazing, but we're certainly making the most of what we've got right now.
Yeah, and you haven't touched the stick for some time. Must be nice, especially with the Olympics so far away. I mean, there's no need to, and it must be somewhat refreshing for you, or?
Yeah, definitely. I certainly used the first few weeks of isolation just to, sticks down, use it as that. We only normally get probably a good 3 to 4 week block in the summer after a Europeans or that major summer competition for us, where we can just put sticks down and not worry about hockey whatsoever.
Yeah.
And the first few weeks of isolation here definitely sort of reflected that. Like, gosh, like there's no reason to be training. Like, the Olympics is 18 months down the line now. Let's just refresh. And I think you definitely do need that, especially at my ripe old age of 33. I've been doing it for over a decade, to find a little window where hockey obviously is really important to me, and I love playing the sport, but there are times where you just need to let the mind focus on other stuff. I think it's really, really important.
True. Now I have to ask, you do mention your age. I mean, you're very sprightly and very quick.
Yeah.
For anyone who's seen you play. But, delaying the Olympics by a year, did you ever think that would be an issue with performance or anything like that? Was it a worry, or?
Not for me personally. I don't know whether it's a mindset or just like biomechanically. Like, I've got a lot of confidence in my body, and I think that ultimately, when the news came through, it was a no-brainer to go to the Olympics, potentially be captain at the Olympics. Has been a massive goal,
for sure.
And just to push that back for another 18 months, I think my body's capable of doing so. Now, of course, there are a couple of doubts that creep in. Partly, I had other things sort of lined up post Tokyo, as with all of the other GB guys would have had something lined up, and same probably goes for you Aussie guys as well. But yeah, it was sort of, I got quite excited about the whole summer as a few months. So it would have, like, obviously all being well, get picked to go to Tokyo, give it my best shot there, hopefully get some success, and then sort of like start the next chapter in my life. So yeah, that sort of gets put on hold. I know they're actually playing abroad, playing in Holland and Belgium and Germany for quite a few of the squad has been a big, not contentious issue, but has been a big issue on that's been raised in several of our sort of Skype calls and stuff.
The fact that they can't continue those plans because of all this. Yeah, that's been a big issue everywhere, I think.
Yeah, I don't know how many we would have had, maybe five or six from our current squad looking to go and play in Holland. Some are sort of like signed, sealed, contracts all sorted, accommodation sorted. And yeah, that just like that post-Olympic year is always such it's a nice year. You've worked so hard for a whole cycle, and then just to continue to have hockey as a focus, but albeit with not so much pressure,
intensity.
In a good, like, meeting new people and pushing yourself in a different ways is something that I loved. Has always been encouraged of me to go and do, and it's just a shame that it's not going to necessarily happen next year for some of the guys. But hopefully, as long as the Dutch clubs or Belgian, German clubs are still keen for it, then I reckon there might still be some wiggle room with the following season.
Yeah, it is mental actually, because the Olympics, I mean, now that it's been pushed to 2021, it kind of goes Olympics, Commonwealth Games, World Cup, Olympics. I think
the Commonwealth is a little bit later on in the year this time. Is that
in 2022? Is that?
Yeah,
not sure.
So I think that gives. I think it's the summer of 2022.
Yeah. Okay.
So that gives
a year in between.
Where there might be an option for people to go and play abroad. But who knows?
Who knows? It's hectic. Anyway, we're going to, some would say controversially, leave isolation and everything that entails for the moment. See what I did there? And we're going to go to you and your hockey journey. Now, just to introduce you to some of the listeners, I've been doing some background research on you. I do know you outside of the context of this chat, but...
Any surprises come up?
Yeah, there actually are. You used 3 words to describe yourself in a recent interview.
In a recent interview?
Yeah, do you know
Here
what
we
go. One is happy, which, judging by the smiley face, I'm not sure it's because you're talking to me or because the birds are chirping or what's that, but happy, determined, and coffee is the third one.
Okay. I can't remember writing those, but we'll go with it, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, 2 adjectives and coffee. Is that what does that mean?
Yeah, I think I'm.
It means you're made of coffee. Like you do love your coffee.
No. I think I probably just can't survive without it, to be honest.
Right. Okay.
Whether that's a good thing or bad, probably a very bad thing. But
that's you.
This is going to sound terrible, but like sometimes actually, like it's the first thing that comes into my mind when I wake up in the morning. It's like, right, let's go and flick the machine on, let's get the espresso going.
To be fair, when we were talking about this interview, we were trying to figure out a time that matched up with Australian time and the UK, and 11 o'clock a.m. was decided on because it gave you time to wake up and have a coffee, and that's 11 a.m.
Absolutely.
That's not. That's pretty late.
That's pretty late. But, I mean, I'm in isolation. I'm not. I'm not the busiest guy at the moment. But yeah.
And the other thing is that one of your teammates, actually, Luke Taylor, has named you as his favourite teammate.
Obviously.
And in brackets, he says Ken Shamrocks. Does that name mean anything to you? And what does that tell us about?
Yeah, that's my that's my gamer tag on.
Okay,
I'm a big gamer. I make no secret of it. Yeah, I'm a big gamer.
It is.
And I know you are too. So don't try and act cool. But yeah, actually, the isolation has provided a good amount of time to.
Finally, none of this hockey stuff you got to worry about. You can just commit to what's really important.
I think esports are going to make the Olympics one day, aren't they? So I think I can
I
get ahead of the
see.
curve.
A dual sport cross-code Olympian. Few of those, actually,
wow.
not many.
No. But yeah, if they have Call of Duty in the Olympics,
Then you'd be
I'm up
there.
for it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've got coffee and gaming. That's a good start so far. We're going to go back to hockey briefly because it is topical to my podcast. How'd you start? You started when you were six years old. And I think it also says that your first hockey memory was watching your old man play. So obviously it was a family affair, very much like it is in Australia. Is that fair that it's a family sport?
I think,
UK?
there's a lot of similarities across both countries in that respect. Yeah, my dad played hockey and cricket. My early memories of dad were sport, being around the changing rooms or being stood at the side of the pitch, whether it's cricket or hockey. Some good memories. But I think the story goes, as far as my parents tell me, that was about as soon as I could walk. Basically, I was about 1 year old. Dad just sort of like cut down one of his old wooden hockey sticks, threw it in my hands, and got me going that way. And I didn't start properly until I was about 6 because you couldn't really get any competitive stuff. There was not many under 4 leagues going on, but there were certainly some good people locally, good coaches who were willing to just chuck me in at the deep end. So there was a summer hockey camp that ran for a few weeks. It was under 9s and above. But my mum had a word with this guy called Sean O'Grady. And she said, look, my son loves hockey. He's 6 years old. He won't be any bother. Do you mind if he comes along? And Sean said, yeah, great. They're probably struggling for numbers or something. So yeah, great. In you come. And we just sort of, I think when I look back on my career, there's been a lot of like just being chucked in at the deep end, a bit like that first early experience. So the sort of progression through British hockey is that you'd find you'd either most likely start at school, but there are a lot of very good clubs around as well. And schools often link into clubs quite nicely. So you're either playing at a club or a school from the age of 6.
Yeah.
You'll be playing competitive hockey like under 9s, under 11s, under 13s, all the way up to under 18s. And you then get, representational honours. So England split up into, I don't know how many counties, probably, I'm going to get this so badly wrong, probably like 30, 40 counties.
That's a quote, yeah. Yeah.
That's a quote, gosh. My county was Nottinghamshire, and they had their own hockey body, Notts Hockey, and they actually, although it's pretty old school, lots of drills and old school coaching back in the day, but it certainly set me up pretty nicely. Like lots of just passing between cones and receiving and leading. It was every Friday night down at Beeston Hockey Club. This was before I joined Beeston. I was from a small town called Newark, and I got picked to play in the Notts County like under 14 team when I was 8 years old. So I think that might still be a record. And I remember turning up and playing, and like the kit was just 10 times too big. It still is often far too big for me, most of the kit that we get. But I remember playing. I just had like the cheapest wooden stick that probably would snap if you put any sort of force through it. Luckily, I was still pretty small and can hit a ball hard.
Under 14s, that's ridiculous. That's surely illegal. I mean, you would have been knee high.
I think it actually might be illegal these days.
It has to be illegal. That's impossible. Like, come on.
But this was back in the 90s, mate. I don't know if you probably don't have any memories of the 90s.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do have some really, really good memories of that sort of under 9s to under 14s sort of period in my life. We had school hockey in the UK is absolutely dominated by private schools.
Okay.
They can afford to have like the pick of the coaches. They can bring kids on scholarships. They've often got facilities that are better than the majority of the hockey clubs in the UK. So the school scene is in the private school scene is huge. My early experiences, I didn't go to a private school. I was a local state school, but we did have one coach who was passionate about hockey, and he basically took the school football team, which was only like 7 or 8 aside. He basically just added me to that team. They were the gifted athletes. He knew they could, run around for half an hour in a match, and he added a couple of hockey players to that mix. And we actually went all the way through local competitions, all the way up to the national finals under 11s. So that was John Hunt Junior School, and we were playing all the big private schools. And I think we were the first ever non-private school to make the national finals. Okay. And we didn't win. We got absolutely destroyed when we got to the national final.
What a story it was shaping up to be. But still, yeah.
But that's awesome. I think just seeing how you didn't necessarily have to have the greatest set of hockey players. No disrespect to some of those guys, because some of them did go on to become very good hockey players, but we were all quite raw. But what we actually went on, like what we had in terms of team camaraderie and just those dynamics certainly gave us that edge all the way through to those national finals. And I think that's something that stayed with me ever since.
That's interesting because, I mean, like Australia, the UK is obviously pretty sports mad. It doesn't mean you guys are necessarily any good at it, but I mean, we share that, I guess, in both our countries. So, our hockey doesn't get much of a look in because we're, competing with soccer, rugby union, rugby league, AFL, pretty much any other sport. And it sounds like UK is pretty similar, but it also sounds that hockey is going pretty well in the UK, especially when you talk about the private schools and how it's quite big in there. How does that all?
Yeah, there's no doubt about like hockey. It does struggle to pick up, column inches in the papers. Much interest on TV. I mean, it's with the addition of the Pro League and that sort of like regular like calendar of fixtures, it certainly helps. But actually trying to get like the domestic product on TV has been quite tricky. Yeah. I know like in the past that England hockey have like they've had to pay for the production up front, but it's never really sort of gotten over the line. And I'm sure there are loads of reasons that go into that. Hockey is a popular sport in terms of participation numbers. And I think that's in large part because of the school system. So many people play hockey at school, but then give it up at the age of 16 or 18, unless you go on to university where hockey is still a big sport. You probably continue to play or be a part of a club locally. So yeah, in terms of participation numbers, hockey probably does compete with most, except for football, which is just enormous here. I mean, I'm sure. Well, we travel the world, and even when we come over to Perth or Sydney, you've still got the English Premier League stuff being shown all over. Like Liverpool still making headlines, which is just absurd, really. Yeah, so we're definitely competing against those sports, but I think we are we've had some really good leadership over the last few years and got some good direction, and the international stuff I think will always be able to sell itself. I'd love to see the domestic game get a bit more exposure. But like, I don't know if we need to go to some sort of like online model. I don't know. I just think I think it sort of has to be. We need to start trying to stream games. I think every club should, be encouraged to find some way of streaming their games or make it certainly accessible in like a highlights package. Yeah. Because I think the best leagues in the world do that and have done that for a long time. I think the reason so many people want to go and play in Holland is because when you're an aspiring hockey player growing up and you start to see what's going on in the hockey world, the first thing that comes up is Holland, because there are highlights of the games. And that's what I did when I was a teenager. Watch the Dutch highlights and see how Bloemendaal and Amsterdam and that sort of, you get accustomed to those sort of household hockey names. But so they've been sort of doing it for a while. I wonder if we can possibly learn any lessons there.
It's interesting. I mean, looking from an Australian perspective, never having played a club comp in Europe, it seems like the infrastructure is there in the UK. I mean, in Australia, we've got 7, 8 different major club competitions, just considering the vastness of the country, whereas you guys have the capacity to have one Premier League. And I mean, that in itself would mean that it's going to be a very, very strong competition. So, yeah, what do you think's behind it?
Yeah, it is a strong competition. I think there are some very strong clubs. I think I've played for Beeston all my life. We're in a bit of we've sort of gone full circle in a way. Like when I first joined, we were like in Division 1 below the Premier League, like trying to get promoted. We got promoted, went on in quite a short space of time to get our first national title, won it a few times, and now we're like sort of a mid-table side trying to find our identity again and get a good balance and blend of players. Compare that to Surbiton, who are positioned quite closely to Bisham Abbey, which is where the centralised GB programme is based. Surbiton have picked up, I don't know, basically a new team of international players in the past few years, and that goes for Wimbledon, Old Georgians, and this is a very quick snapshot of what's going on. Some of these clubs have been trying to build for years and years, and blah blah blah. But it is. I think the English league at the moment is as competitive as it's ever been, but it's not. Although it's called a national league, we're sort of lacking that sort of. There's only one team in the north, I think, who feature, and they're from Manchester.
Right. Okay.
And they almost got relegated this year. And I think if we want it to be a proper national league and be, representative of the nation as a whole, I think the centralised programme hasn't really helped that. And the players, of course, are always going to move to where they're told to move because you want to play for England and Great Britain.
Is that how it works? Are there affiliations?
Pretty much.
Right. Okay.
So me, for example, I still play for Beeston, who are 100 miles away from Bisham Abbey. I live 2 miles away from Bisham Abbey, but I made the decision to keep playing for my club. It means a bit more travelling, and it can be a bit tough. It definitely is tough, but I quite like that. But then you compare that to, say, Phil Roper, who is originally from Chester, was playing hockey at uni in Sheffield. Once he got the chance to come down and join the GB England programme, he moved down to Maidenhead, just lives up the road from me. But he didn't want to continue to travel back to his home club or wherever. So he just joins a local club, which is like common sense. Like, 9 out of 10 people would do the same. But what that's done is really focus that sort of the elite pool of players across just a handful of clubs. And so all those clubs that are just out of reach. So I guess if your club, is based more than 20 miles away from Bisham Abbey, you're probably unlikely to really attract a lot of the cream of the crop.
Yeah, right.
And that's something that I think does need to be addressed. It's not an easy one. It really isn't. But I think if you want a really healthy national league, that sort of has to be looked at.
That's an interesting comment between like building up your national league, I guess, and then taking the top of the national league and making them even better. Now I'm going to briefly interrupt here to introduce a feature of the show. We'll call it our Hero of Hockey segment. We know that community sport flourishes on the back of hard-working volunteers who give up their time and effort simply for the love of it. And we want to give you, the listener, the opportunity to contact us and tell us who deserves to be our Hero of Hockey for the week. Tell us who they are, what club they're from, and what they've done for the sport, and we'll give them and your club a shout out. So get in touch via our socials, and your nominee could be chosen for the next episode. This week's Hero of Hockey is Dave Willett from the Norths Hockey Club in Newcastle. Now, I've had the pleasure of being coached by Dave over the years, and can only add that he's a brilliant man of hockey who, as a coach, you'd run through a brick wall for, because you can be pretty sure he'd have already done it himself. Dave's contribution to hockey in Newcastle and New South Wales has been phenomenal, to say the least. In the past 25 years, he's been the driving force behind Norths Hockey Club's success to be not only a powerhouse club in the Hunter region, but also recognised as a leading club in the wider state of New South Wales. In the 17 years of the combined Hunter Coast Premier Hockey League, as a player coach and now coach, Dave has led Norths to the grand final on all but one occasion, winning an impressive 8 titles. Dave is credited with resurrecting the junior club when his son started playing, taking Norths from just 3 men's teams to the 11 teams that North have today. He's coached at every age group for Norths, Newcastle, and for New South Wales junior state teams. He serves as the Norths Club president, the Newcastle Junior Boys president, sits on the Newcastle Men's Committee, is the Newcastle senior coach, and the assistant coach of the New South Wales Pride, who took out the inaugural Sultana Brand Hockey 1 League in 2019. With an incredibly diverse portfolio of involvements right across hockey in New South Wales, Dave has previously noted how good it was to one day be coaching the elite and the next day coaching a group of beginners and watching them smile when they make their first trap, tackle, or score a goal. A wonderful and humble servant of the game, Dave deserves every bit of recognition he gets. So, thanks for all you do, Dave. Hockey appreciates your efforts. Now it's back to Adam Dixon, who's going to paint a picture of what high-performance hockey looks like in Great Britain and what might be needed to break into the mainstream. With a centralised program, you're kind of pouring a lot of your effort into those, what is the squad, 27 for you guys?
Yeah. Well,
27.
Yeah, a couple more, but yeah.
So you guys train what's the setup like for the
Yeah, so
program?
we're essentially employed by GB Hockey, and therefore 5 days a week we train as a national squad, which is a huge strength of ours, especially when you compare that to some other countries. I don't know who we could pick. I don't know, maybe like New Zealand or something. You know, just to have that contact time to be able to train day in, day out, like work on whether it's pressing or you know, corners or anything like that. Like you can actually make quite noticeable gains like within a short space of time. Whereas if you're on that sort of like camp-based structure, you're always having to revisit and come back. Probably going to be sitting on the fence a little bit, because I think the centralised program is really good and it's got GB Hockey to where it is currently. Can we make it better? Almost certainly, but we're not in a bad place. I guess it's quite similar in a way to what you boys do over in Perth. So you've got guys travelling all across the country, relocating, and then you can, you know, build something together and build a good program off the back of that. Yeah,
it is interesting.
It's certainly centralised program. Like I said, has its benefits and its disadvantages. Part of it is like, again, I don't want to sound too like I'm taking this for granted, but like sometimes too much of a good thing can sort of like wear you down. So like actually doing the same, like being in the same place week after week, it just sort of, it can potentially, if not managed well, just end up, you know, snowballing. And if you get into a bit of a rut with your game or your sort of mental health, like that's quite hard to then get out of if you're in that constant same environment and there's no sort of interventions coming in. I think we've made over the last couple of cycles big steps forward with that. I'm trying to think of some examples of, you know, like we have loads of like mental health support, like a great team of like psychologists, and they feed into the coaches and stuff quite well, and checking in with players. So like definitely the well-being and the welfare of the squad and the team is really well taken care of. I think probably one of the bigger things of having, the bigger advantages of having a centralised program is that you don't have to train a million miles an hour, 100% every single day. So like finding that workload balance is really important. And I think that's probably the biggest difference over, let's say, when we first started doing centralised in 2012, 13, we would train 5 days a week and it would be tough. Like you would be coming home, your legs, you'd be like hanging on, like wondering whether you could even turn up to train tomorrow. You get a few guys falling ill. But now I think we manage that situation a lot better. There's, it really feels like the sessions, the weeks, the blocks are really well planned out. And off the back of that, I don't think, unless it's like a big impact injury, we don't get many sort of like soft tissue injuries. I think generally we've got it. We can probably do it better, but I think we've got it down. Quite well.
Sounds like there's a lot of benefits to it. It obviously, I mean, going back to the point before, building up the rest of the competition versus sharpening those at the top. it's definitely something that we think about in Australia, having
Mm.
the big process of relocating to Perth and the high performance centre over there. And I guess the interesting thing for me is that I assume that the problem wouldn't be so big for you guys in GB because, like, for example, you can still go back and play for your home club and you're still playing in the one competition. But it's obviously not that simple. And the way you're explaining it, training
Yeah,
means that you don't really have the luxury to go and play for your home club if you're if you're from Manchester or whatever anyway.
there's always has been a bit of like clubs that anti-establishment and like to rock the boat, and there's a bit of it coming back the other way, which is not a bad thing. If you want the best for the sport, you need to be sometimes at loggerheads and trying to thrash things out. But I don't think we've yet come to a league structure, training structure that basically the calendar as a whole that really complements everything. Can we ever get to a place like that? I don't know. There's always going to be someone who's kicking up a fuss no matter what gets put in place. But yeah, I think. But like Holland, they don't have. I think they train. They do have like a centralized program, but it's sort of like just a few days a week or a couple of days a week. Certainly, their geography allows them to do that. Small country, it doesn't take long for any of them to get around the country. And I think I do think that's probably the same for England. Although we're a bigger country, it doesn't take that long to drive from one side of the country to the other. With a bit of good forward thinking and planning, you could probably have people living anywhere in England or the UK.
Sure.
And if you weren't training so often, like, you could be putting money into travel expenses. And I mean, travel takes its toll, but there are definitely other models that we could look at. I'm not saying we've got it perfect right now. Could be something to think about in the future.
With the centralised program, does it mean that you guys can somewhat live as professional athletes, or is it still very much a semi-pro sport in the UK?
Good question. I think you have to consider yourself as a professional,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you have to have that attitude that it's full time. Mm-hmm. I think there's only one guy in our squad, George Pinner, who has a job outside of hockey currently. But being a goalkeeper, I think maybe he has that sort of physical space to be able to, or mental space to be able to go and throw himself into something else. But I think my personal experience is that if I go to training, I don't feel like I can do anything else other than play hockey. And the centralised program has helped me be a professional hockey player for the last, I really consider it a full-time job for the last sort of 8 years, I guess.
Okay. So it's 9 to 5. What's the day look like?
I think you sort of have to treat it like a 9 to 5. It might not, you might not have to be at Bisham Abbey for 8 hours a day, but you would certainly be in the morning. Probably latest start would be about 10 a.m., whether that's a gym or a pitch session. For me, that's quite easy, just to drive 10 minutes up the road. Other guys live in London, so that could be like a 45 minute to an hour commute in. We'd train for a couple of hours or gym for a couple of hours, probably have like a meeting in the middle and then do something. If it was hockey in the morning, it'd be gym in the afternoon, vice versa. Generally sort of follows that pattern. Monday, I'll run through the week. So Monday would be gym in the AM, hockey in the PM. Tuesday would be hockey sort of midday. Wednesday is a sort of off day or like a recuperation day. So you'd still be doing some activity. I'd like jump on a bike for like 45 minutes, and it's quite hard work, but it certainly sets you well up for the rest of the week. Thursday is a double hockey session day. No, take that back. Thursday is a hockey in the morning, gym in the afternoon, and then Friday hockey. And then you've got club hockey and things on the weekend as well. And then if you have got a club local to you, you probably do have some demand from the club to go and train with them in one of those evenings that week. So it all does rack up. I've been to uni, got a degree, but right now no way would I be able to juggle a job with
it sounds intense.
With, hockey training demands. Yeah,
I
guess that's probably similar to what you guys do in Australia, on a weekly sort of, and a couple of gym sessions and maybe like 5 to 6 pitch sessions.
Yeah, it's a little different. I mean, we train in the mornings and outside of working hours, so that we can kind of like we're firmly in that semi-pro space. I mean, it's definitely not enough to set you up for any much longer than after you've retired, I guess. And I think the thing about hockey in Australia as well is that there's not a lot of wriggle room to make much more money off clubs, especially us in over in Perth. There's a draft system, which means that we if we do play club hockey in Perth, we don't get paid for it at all, which I think is maybe a little different to the way it works out in the UK.
Yeah, I think basically the club environment has really changed over the last 10 years. There have always been English clubs, and it sort of tends to move around a little bit if there's a rich benefactor comes in as a chairman or a president or something, and he wants to put some money into the club that he's played for all his life, and that does happen from time to time. So there's always been people getting paid. Mainly, when in my early days, it was Aussies or Kiwis or Saffers coming over, stealing all our money. But no, we definitely had some good players come over in years gone by. But more recently, especially when the centralised program kicked in, and some of these, because London is a bit of definitely is the hotbed of hockey in the UK. A lot of school and club activity around here. Some of the smarter clubs caught wind of what was going on, knew that there were going to be 30 top athletes joining the centralised program, and it became a bit of a frenzy as to who could sign who in the short space of time. And some clubs have done much better than others. Look at Wimbledon, Hampstead and Westminster, Surbiton. They've done really well and have had domestic success over the last few years. You could also compare that with Reading, who arguably the closest team to Bisham Abbey. This year, I think they got relegated, and they've been they've won the European Cup in the last 15, 20 years. But they just, I don't know what it was about the club, but none of the GB players flocked to Reading Hockey Club, and they've missed a trick there. But yeah, it's quite funny. So there are definitely some guys now. I don't know what people are getting paid. It's not my position to really comment, but there's definitely guys supporting their income from UK sport and GB hockey through the club system. And I guess, compare that with the situation in Perth. Again, we're very lucky that we can tap into that resource and be professional athletes and have that as our sole focus. And I think when you're serious when you're serious about sport and you've got Olympic aspirations, you go and do things, that definitely helps to be able to focus solely on the sport that you're chasing success in.
Definitely. It's is the club comp, does that make a difference towards national team selection?
Yes, it does. We've only got three coaches on the men's side of things anyway. You've got Danny, Russell and Kwan. And Kwan plays for one of those clubs still at the age of 40, whatever he is. And they're still they're winning titles. He's still one of the best players in the league. If he wasn't Trinidadian, he might still be playing for England. But they can only be at a handful of games. They can't see everything. And I think in the past there have been criticisms of coaches not turning up and seeing the grassroots game and seeing picking players that haven't necessarily come through the system, because we all know there's guys who miss out on junior representative stuff, sure. Develop late, and then they peak in their mid-20s, say, and there has been a lack of that, I think, over certainly my 15, 20 years in hockey. More recently, I think Danny has given some younger guys a chance, and I think that's because they deserve it. That's because it adds competition for places amongst the rest of the guys. But over the last 18, 24 months since he's been involved, I think we've probably had more debutants in that period than we maybe have done in the 6 or 7 years before that. And some of those are now mainstays in the squad. So it goes to show that if you are doing your research, like, there are some very good players in the English league. Now, whether they all make it at international level for whatever reason is a different question. But you need to feel like that those people are being looked at. And there are definitely various mechanisms. I think they do hold a camp for clubs can nominate players that who they feel haven't been seen in the best light or have been missed out, and they come to Bisham Abbey and have a camp, and there's a chance for them to get picked and brought into the team. But I guess I don't know. I guess the NHL or the Hockey One thing for you guys is probably a showcase event for younger guys. I guess the National League is to an extent, but it's over a longer period of time. So I think it's getting better, but I think ultimately it still favours those who come through the system from under 16, under 18, 21. If you're in there and you manage to stay in there, it's definitely better. But it is changing.
I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of, the administration and all these sorts of questions, like they're really difficult. And you've kind of touched on a lot of the tensions and that sort of stuff that exists. But for the most part, it sounds like quite a well-oiled machine. And certainly when we come and play in England and the UK, even just the theatre of it. I mean, I really enjoy coming and playing in the UK because there are great crowds. It's well run. There's always a halftime entertainment. Not that we're focusing on that. We're focusing on the team talk. But there's always something going on. And it just looks like a lot of fun. And I've been and watched tournaments in London as well. And it's a fantastic place to watch hockey. So certainly, as you said, that international side of things is pretty well looked after, it seems like.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's quite nice to hear you say that. And I think as English people, we're often sort of pessimistic and maybe don't like little things like the organisation of a tournament when we play at Lee Valley, like you've even mentioned halftime entertainment. Like, I mean, how much do we think as the hockey sort of nation in the UK, how much do we really think about that and appreciate that? We've probably got it much better than we actually realise. As British, like to find something to complain about most of the time. So actually, I do think. I mean, we used to host international competitions at a small regional club, try and cram as many people in as we could. Didn't really feel like a professional, like well-managed event. And we've certainly now, with having Lee Valley, found a home. And,
yeah, definitely.
I mean, you only have to look at that Women's World Cup.
Yeah.
2018 was it? My word, that sort of. I mean, it definitely helped that they won the gold in Rio and they had a lot of publicity and media attention off the back of that. But I mean, there's never seen crowds for a hockey game like that in the UK. And it's not, even though like we have that home, it's not the easiest part of London to get to. You've still got to walk and, it's a little bit fiddly, but people came in their droves and that's unbelievable. And I think as with anything though, a lot of this is all underpinned by, firstly, like good organisation, good people who like mean well, have hockey at their in their best interests. But most importantly, it's underpinned by success, and the girls have done such a great job over the last cycle and the cycles before that, because they medalled at London. They really built something, and that. If I put it bluntly, they kept, as a men's program, the girls kept our funding in place. Like they were hitting medal targets, we weren't, so they kept us in the job. So thank you very much to the women's squad. But it is. If we want hockey to continue to grow, and like I've already mentioned, I'd love to see the domestic game get on TV or be put out there in some shape or form. Like there needs to be success at the top, and I think. That is going to be really important. We need to find that tipping point where we need to force people to come and watch us, or start writing articles about us, or we need to sort of force that hand a little bit. But yeah, we're certainly not in a bad place when you compare it to some other places. Yeah, some other places. I'm trying to think of some of the worst competitions I've been in, but I probably shouldn't.
No, it is interesting. You guys, when we come and watch, and we come and play you in Lee Valley, like it's in London, it's the home of hockey, it's at the site of the 2012 London Olympics. I mean, you guys are stars there, and the women's program in particular. Like, there are some genuine sporting stars coming from the hockey program who seem like they're in the limelight of wider British sport. And I mean, as you say, like, that is a crowded market, but it's interesting.
Yeah, there definitely are some household names now. I think you turn on, like, we've got a few sports TV shows, talk shows and things, game shows, and on the BBC, and it's not uncommon to see Alex Danson or Maddie Hinch, feature on one of those, which is amazing. Like, it really is. Yeah. So they've done absolute wonders for our sport. Yeah. I'd love to see, being biased, I'd love to see I'm not saying I'd be any good on a TV show. I'd be awful. Ratings would drop and people would stop watching the show altogether. But
the irony is not lost on me that they're on the BBC and you're on my podcast. I mean, that's a pretty stark comparison.
Hey, don't knock yourself down. You're the next Joe Rogan, mate. You're the next Joe Rogan.
Big thank you to the production team of David Moore, Tim Collier, and Jimmy Stevens. If you do like The Help Side, please like, subscribe, interact. We'd love to hear from you. You can find us at The Help Side on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's it for now. We'll catch you on The Help Side next time.